You have been said, taught, and made to learn the value of concentration, because we know that concentration achieves a great success. Concentration is the key of every success. Yet, for majority of the people, concentration is the greatest challenge. So how to gain the concentration? What are the mechanisms, especially in this digitally distraction-filled world? What are the methods to implement the concentration? If you closely observe, all the greatest things that are ever achieved by the people are made possible only when the people stepped into the zone of concentration. Concentration is a great mechanism or a beautiful place or a powerful state of being where you get focused only on one single thing until you gain the mastery, you dominate the tracks, and you find your space that makes your mark. So let us understand, before, concentration is the element, but what is the opposite to it? Distraction. What is the other requirement which you need to surpass into? There is definitely a gap between the distraction and concentration. Greatest space of creativity. Concentration is the greatest source of inspiration, greatest source of achievement, greatest space of creativity. But what is the opposite of concentration? Distraction. Between the space of concentration and distraction, there is one more less talked about massive state. That is what ignored the majority people who talk about concentration and distraction. That is boredom. Feeling of boring. Greatest less highlighted aspect between concentration and distraction is the concept of this subject, and dominate the darkness of boredom to enter into the space of concentration, which ultimately crowns you the success what you're looking for. You must be knowing about the Jewish people, the Jews. During the Hitler's regime, he was very much disliked. He was very much scorning the category of Jews. If you go back to the pages of history, you find right from the age of Babylon to the current generation, Jews are the greatest industrialists. Jews are the greatest physicists, education. Jews outperform every other category. But if you clearly understand, there is a mechanism that is followed by them unconsciously, and that is there in the paradox, that is there in these orthodox families. Let me take you first. There is a greatest scriptures, the books which are written in so complicated language that it would take serious brain strain for the people in order to understand the deep inside depth meaning of the books written by the Jewish scholars. There is a place in Spring Valley in New York. If you go there every weekend, early in the morning at 6 a.m. in the ancient building, just right in front of it, there would be dozens of luxurious cars parked in the lot. And if you enter into that old historic building, you would see hundreds of people belonging to the category of Jews put their complete concentration and struggle, put their complete attention and try to read the oldest scriptures, which hardly makes sense, but they strive towards it, trying to understand, extract and observe the complete meaning of the information which is very limitedly altered in any other language. And there would be the leader guiding the people, pushing them forward in terms of making them stretch their minds and extract deep in-depth meaning to the level of their cognitive abilities. And this is done very much intentionally, and this is done on a purpose, because they believe in one thing, that if you push your mind, your brain, if you stress and strain it to the extent where it can go to the depth and feel utmost pressure on itself, thinking on one single topic or element, they believe the mental muscles would become strong. It is like calisthenic workout for your mind, of working on that element at the serious level of the brain. It makes other tangible things on a day-to-day life experiences or the problems that are faced by the people on the day-to-day life things becomes much more easy and less complicated for the people. And this mechanism is not taught to them on a very grown-up age. That would be the part of their life and their culture right from the age of 5. They're made to work on that particular things. So working on such difficult contextual meanings, which in another ways are not possible for them to extract, that deliberately stresses and puts them into a deep thinking format. And this is connected to their faith, and this makes them work in a disciplined format, as it is very much connected to their living, being and existence. So reading such complex sentences in rabbinic Judaism takes their mind and mental cognizance to the next level. It is strongly believed by many historians that the Jews run the businesses successfully and they outperform all other people on a global scale because they subject their minds to the deepest strain, which in other ways, when implemented on simple life matters, makes it very much easy for them to creatively think on the subject and bring a better resolution. And that is single primary reason why Jewish professional students, artists outperform all other people. It is same like your physical muscle. When you lift up 50 kgs all at once, 20 is not a matter to you. If you run 10 kilometers without stopping, stopping on a without any halt and made it a habit for yourself, so running for 2 kilometers on any given time is not a matter to you. In the same way, straining your mind to the next level and giving you ordinary day-to-day tasks is not a big deal. And that is the reason business professionals whom you see in the Jewish world are magnificently successful. And the reason for this, to master the art of deep thinking, is discipline. The conscious selection of subjugating your mind to the deepest stress makes out the better concentration, which ultimately makes you the path for the success. Marlin, the Jewish guy, when asked about this practice, who was practicing it for quite some time, has mentioned that he has seen greatest change, greatest shift in his ability to think on the topics before being the part of this ritual of reading the hard rabbinic complex texts. He was saying that he was rapidly making valid and creative decisions in making his business get expanded like never before. And Merlin himself accepts that upon daily subjugating himself into such deep strained practice has enabled him to reach such success. And he was mentioning that it was not initially his goal of attaining these effects. Rather, he mentions they were simply the side effects of the concentration that he was laying on the spiritual text. It is exactly like Merlin. If you are focusing on the toughest thing, where you'd be adding more concentration, more power to a serious thought, rest of the things become so much easy and simple for you. If you know how to play the game at the highest level, the game at the lowest level becomes super simple to you. The ability to concentrate is a skill, and that skill has to be trained and gained. And there is a clear support for this statement from the evidence of the famous researcher, a famous professor from Stanford Communications, Clifford Nass. And he has done a massive intensive research on the digital distractions back in 2010 itself, and he states that the people who consider themselves doing multitasking lose their power of in-depth concentration, which automatically connected with the cognitive ability and creative thinking will be completely lost upon letting your major part of your brain to work on irrelevant elements, not giving it the guided concentration for the extended period of time. And he clearly states that the people who often multitask cannot find the difference between the relevant and irrelevant work. They compromise the efficiency of a working memory, which ultimately closes down the creative ability of making better choices and creative ability of finding the better solutions for the complex issues. Let's say that between your primary work, the subjugated, the targeted work, and where you are, if your mind is not capable enough of handling the space, the gap between, which we often terms call as a boring period, you oftentimes take up the mobile phone and try to glimpse it, check it. You're distracting your mind rather than focusing on or waiting period, rather than letting your mind on a boredom waiting period. Or consider that you're waiting for your friend in a restaurant and he has to arrive within some time, but meanwhile unable to carry yourself up, you take up your mobile phone and randomly surf something. That is a clear indication of distraction, which you are consciously selecting yourself to lose your focus. This multitasking, this activity of throwing yourself into conscious distraction is a primary cause of losing the creativeness, which you should be doing. In other ways, the boredom, the time when brain feels itself inconvenient, is the exact gap that has to be entertained in order to develop the ability of letting the space creatively work on your mind. And that is a gap that has to be entertained. So the conscious ability of letting yourself be in the boredom and not throwing yourself into some subjugated activities to fill your brain or give it some kind of irrelevant work so that you're distracting it is in no way going to support you or help you in terms of making yourself persistent in walking on the path of making your creative abilities work on the things which ultimately find you through. But if you are someone who is incapable of holding the boredom or that space, that gap there, which you obviously feel irrelevant period, which is the greatest source, by the way, if you do not know how to handle it, you become the slave of the distractions. And the slaves of the distractions lose the competent capability of keeping up with the concentration, and lack of concentration is the result of victory and failure. And failure becomes your recognition, and the recognition becomes your habit. You entertain it, you own it. So the right you gain and the right to master the concentration happens when you have the power to handle the boredom. If the day is not going well, if you don't have any other connections, don't rush into the internet, rather keep it to the side and entertain the boredom. However hard it feels, each and every second may feel as a world for you, each and every minute feels a day for you, still entertain it, because you're consciously getting prepared in your mind the activity of boredom, which It's the greatest source, which is the greatest foundation of the concentration. So next time when you get the opportunity of feeling bored, entertain it. Do not get distracted. Support it. Live in it. Let every moment passing with boredom, in an unentertained manner, with no kind of stimulation. Let it be. Walk through it. Observe it carefully. Because that ultimately is going to make you a master. That ultimately is going to bring the best out of you. And that ultimately is going to add value to your recognition. See you in the next video.